At the annual political gathering, innovation, deepening reform, advancing high-level opening up are all top priorities. Here's my talk with Zhang Yichen, a CPPCC member who's the chairman and CEO of CITIC Capital Holdings. He shared his views about how China mapped out the economy in the year 2021. How do you see China's mapping out the year 2021 in terms of its economic growth, and what does it mean for private equity like yours?
China obviously has done very well containing the coronavirus. It's the first economy to achieve positive growth in last year and rebounding very strongly out of the pandemic. For this year, even when compared against 2019, I think the growth numbers are very impressive, well over 20%. So which bodes well for the overall growth for this year. And clearly, the target at the government work report is set as 6% GDP growth for this year. But I think the numbers may very well be a lot higher. But at the same time, the premier was at our group discussion. He said, there is room to achieve a higher number, but the government is not trying to target the growth for this year only. It's more cares about the longer-term sustainability. So that's why it's trying to build a solid foundation for the growth well into the next 5 years, which is the 14th five-year plan. So, with that background, I think our investment is very active, and we're very busy. We're looking at a lot of different industries, but the focus tends to be on technology, consumption, and many new modern infrastructure type of investments.
Let me ask you a little bit further about technology. I was reading some materials regarding your proposal this year. You are talking about, for PEs like you would love to look more into technology innovation, particularly deep tech. Tell me more about what you referred to.
Technology and innovation are at the forefront of the government plans, and are the top priority for the 14th five-year plan. And we also see tremendous opportunities in those areas. I think one is the overall Chinese economy is transitioning to a higher quality type of growth, so which requires technological advance. Second, I think the ongoing tensions with the U.S., particularly since about 2 years ago when the Trump administration imposed a number of extremely unreasonable and restrictive control on technology exchanges. I think that which set off a longer-term decoupling in certain technological areas. So from that perspective, we are focusing on the throat choking points. Those technologies, I think first and foremost will come to mind. It will be the semiconductor industry. Clearly, what Huawei has experienced has reminded many Chinese companies that they need to have alternative suppliers. So that is one area. And I think in terms of deep tech and so on and so forth, the overall innovation in China is clearly extremely active, and the investment in those areas are booming. We in the past mainly focused on late-stage investment, but given the market opportunities, we are setting up venture type of an investment domestically, mostly in the renminbi market, to focus on those opportunities as well.
So now, what does that mean for the Chinese investors? How much the role will the state play? Because these are supposed to be a state approach, some of these areas. So how much space is there leaving for the private investors, including PE investors like you?
I think this is mostly driven by the market. The market players like us see these opportunities and want to capitalize on them. And the state obviously is trying to create the right environment, also in terms of funding basic R&D. But in terms of capitalizing on these market-oriented technological investments, it's mostly the market players.
Mr. Zhang, you've been investing both inside China and certainly in different parts of the world. So given the current circumstances, are you having two very diverse plans regarding investments in China and investment elsewhere in the world?
Well, we have always invested mainly in China, but about 20 to 30% of our investment are overseas. For example, last year, through one of our portfolio companies, Harbin Pharmaceutical, we bought a U.S. health supplement company, GNC, out of bankruptcy, and in the process saved about 10,000 U.S. jobs. And that was actually the largest Chinese investment into the U.S. last year, despite of all the tensions, all the obstacles that we had to overcome. Our objective is, one, is trying to save a 85-year-old U.S. brand and help it to grow in the U.S. again. At the same time, we're really trying to build up GNC's presence in China, and hopefully GNC could have a potential market that rivals the size of the U.S. For its product at some point.
Well, earlier you also have a very successful example of the McDonald's in China. And Mr. Zhang, I still remember very clearly the story you told me about the Golden Arch. Of course, it's a great story. But having said that, though, what is the future? Before talking to you, I was also talking to Mr. Ning Gaoning and some of the other business pioneers like you. What is the real cool-headed assessment of the reality from now until the next 2 years? Do you think it will be the time for you to really make a judgment about what is the nature of China-U.S. relations and the nature of your future business environment?
U.S. and China relations will have its shares of bumps along the road, but overall, I am optimistic that it is at least stabilizing. I think, with that sort of outlook, we can at least try ways to cooperate economically. And for example, the GNC example is a good case that the Chinese capital can help the U.S. business and in the U.S. market as well, try to grow in China. I think on the technological space, it is a lot trickier because I think geopolitical tension, national security concerns all come into play. So we need to tread extremely cautiously on those fronts. At the same time, I think we are looking into Europe a lot more. We have done investment in both France and Germany, and which have all performed well. And those companies have been able to develop a tremendous amount of synergies with the Chinese economy.
The other thing, of course, related to that is about the IPOs. For PE investors, I'm sure you've been thinking about this for a long time. Hong Kong or the U.S., which is the better option? Both could have the challenge of instability as a result of chaos. For Chinese PEs, how do you do this assessment?
We have always been, advocating for more listings in Hong Kong. I think Hong Kong market has a natural advantage in terms of, on one hand, the global investors have a lot of access to the Hong Kong market, and Hong Kong attracts a lot of top tier investors. At the same time, it's close enough to the Chinese domestic market, so the knowledge of the company it's a lot better. The U.S. market obviously is the deepest market in the world. However, in the past, it's generally lacking in understanding of many Chinese companies who are not large enough or whose business model frequently misunderstood by U.S. investors. And then on top of that, I think the geopolitical tension with the U.S. and the sort of a random imposition of restrictions by the Trump administration certainly did not help. So these days, many Chinese companies are opting for Hong Kong listing instead of the U.S.
Okay. Also, Mr. Zhang, let me ask you about China's 14th five-year plan. The double circulation, particularly the domestic consumption, of course, it's not driven by the market, but how much potential really is there?
You already answered your own question. That's why it's called double circulation, not a single circulation. So, so by nature, it means China is still trying to integrate with the rest of the world economy, and so the potential growth is huge. It's not limited to the Chinese economy alone, right? Despite of all the trade tariffs the Trump administration imposed on China, China has almost had a record year in terms of the exporting. That shows you that the fundamental driver of the Chinese economy remain very strong, and that is, of course, I think the potential for domestic consumption is even bigger. So, there are many areas for growth, and we could see even simply in our portfolio company like McDonald's, and after suffering for roughly about 3 months of a setback during the pandemic, it started to rebound very strongly, and then by fourth quarter of last year, it already has year-on-year growth, and the first quarter of this year is growing even stronger. So that is a good example of the depth and resilience of the domestic Chinese consumption market.
Facts speaks much louder than rhetorics, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Zhang Yichen, a CPPCC member, thank you so much.